Right is coming for you, EU. Brace yourself for winds that shift and strew. The dawn of change, a fierce gale we ride through corridors of power with nowhere to hide. From Le Pen's rally to Germany's call, the old order quakes, the pillars may fall. In halls of Brussels, whispers grow loud, a new era dawns, defiant and proud. Nationalist fervor, a wave on the crest, old guards falter, put to the test. With flags held high and voices strong, the right surge, a tumultuous song. Yet in the storm a question remains, what future will come, what hope sustains? EU, prepare for the tide's swift embrace. Right is coming with a steadfast pace. Written by yours truly. Intro please.
Welcome to TFI Global, the antidote to mass delusion.
The recent European Union elections have sparked a wave of concern among liberal activists globally. Some analysts, in their biased perspectives, argue that Europe is tilting towards fascism or the far right. However, these claims often overlook that it is precisely the nationalist and conservative parties presenting an alternative to the troubling support of neo-Nazism in Ukraine. In these elections, millions of Europeans cast their votes, resulting in significant gains for right-wing groups. In France, Marine Le Pen's national rally garnered over 30% of the vote, while President Macron's party managed only 15%. In a controversial move, Macron dissolved the National Assembly in response to these results. Similarly, in Germany, the Social Democratic Party, led by Olaf Scholz, received only 14%, while the AfD secured around 15%, and the right-wing CDU-CSU coalition reached approximately 30%. Despite these developments, liberal analysts hastily label the rise of the European right as a sign of fascism, asserting that it threatens democracy across the continent. Yet, the real explanation might be different. Nationalist and conservative parties often adopt a more patriotic stance, prioritizing national interests. This approach allows them to address pressing issues affecting Europe, such as mass immigration and the ongoing economic and energy crisis exacerbated by sanctions on Russia. Parties like Germany's AfD advocate for ending military support for Ukraine, promoting European neutrality in the conflict, and restoring relations with Russia. These stances resonate with many voters who see them as practical solutions to real problems. Contrary to being a fascist wave, the shift towards the right in Europe appears to be a response to the rising tide of fascism, which has been intensifying for quite some time. In their fervent opposition to Russia and allegiance to the US and NATO, European governments have endorsed a neo-Nazi regime in Ukraine, leading to severe economic and energy crisis and widespread deindustrialization. Ordinary Europeans, disillusioned by these policies, are reacting by voting against the incumbent governments. Ironically, the self-styled liberal and democratic parties are the ones currently nurturing fascism in Europe. These parties have embraced the pro-NATO establishment and the US-aligned agenda, causing a surge in Euroscepticism and the conservative right's popularity as a viable alternative. The cultural influence of the US and NATO has also played a role, with liberal and left-wing parties in the EU aligning with the American woke agenda, focusing on issues like LGBT rights and other progressive topics. This has alienated many Europeans, with conservative values further driving the shift towards the right. The desires of ordinary Europeans are pretty darn straightforward. A blend of social justice and traditional values. They are primarily concerned with securing sufficient energy and food to live comfortably without financial strain. European workers seek reforms in migration policy as the native workforce is being supplanted by cheap labor from immigrants and refugees. The situation in rural areas adds another layer of complexity. Protests have erupted across Europe due to the EU's policy of importing Ukrainian grain, which, though intended to support the Kiev regime, has driven local farmers out of business. These farmers, facing economic hardship, tend to vote for opposition parties that criticize support for Ukraine and other unpopular policies. So, to conclude it, the rise of the right in Europe reflects a deeper crisis within the European Union establishment. The dominant parties have irrationally aligned with North Atlantic Treaty Organization's strategies, even supporting neo-Nazism in Ukraine and participating in a proxy war against Russia. The shift of ordinary people towards right-wing parties is not an endorsement of extremism, but a rejection of the prevailing NATO-driven policies. This reaction underscores the urgent need for a reevaluation of Europe's current political and economic strategies to address the real concerns of its citizens.